Hello and welcome to Red Door Conversations. I am your co-host, Lisa White, and guys, we have arrived at our last show for the season. This is episode 12, and we have a good one for you. But before I tell you what we're going to talk about, I have to introduce the lovely ladies that sit at the table with me. I'm going to start with Miss Kimberly Dixon Dudley. How are you today?
Hello, doing fabulous.
Yes, we made it to the last show.
We made it, and I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And we have the lovely Tana Young.
Hey,
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
You look amazing.
Thank you. We forgot the champagne for our last show, but we're gonna be okay.
We're gonna be okay. The party after party. The after
Yeah,
party.
party.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And last but certainly not least, we have the lovely, beautiful, and most amazing Marla Lewis.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited, but I'm a little sad. I won't see you guys for a little while, at least not in the studio.
Right.
Well, I will say this. This has been very, an experience. It's been a good experience. We have moved from a podcast to actual television.
Right.
And so this has been an experience for me. Great experience, but I have a greater appreciation now for your, the real, the view. I have a much greater appreciation.
Yes.
So guys, today's topic is, why international buyers are hot on Houston.
Mm-hmm.
We have an influx of international buyers.
Yes, we know.
Yes, and so we have the wonderful Susan Annour as our guest, and she is the broker owner of Annour Realty Group. And when we come back from commercial, I'm going to give you a little bit about Susan, and we're going to dive into this great show. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. Glad you decided to stay with us. Our topic today is why international buyers are hot on Houston. And our special guest for today is Susan Annour with Annour Realty Group. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Susan because she's a very special individual to me. Met her a few years ago. We were both serving on the International Advisory Group with the Houston Association of Realtors. And I saw something special with Susan. She told a little bit about her background. And from that, she has created, an awesome and amazing company. So Susan, she grew up in the Clear Lake area, kind of much like Marla. Marla is out there in the Clear Lake area. And Susan attended Baylor University. And she ended up in Southern Japan on an exchange program, and when she was about 20 years old. She married her husband, who was a professional athlete at the time. She became a radio DJ. And guys, this is what I like most. I don't know why about her bio, but that she became a radio DJ. She received her master's degree in education. And by that time, she had 2 sons before moving back to Houston. She was living in Japan for almost about 15 years. At that time, when she returned to the States, she was now fluent in Japanese. Susan started Annour Realty Group in 2010, a full-service boutique real estate company specializing in the Japanese market. Guys, I'm telling you, she is a beast. So her firm is now it's the leading firm in Houston for Japanese expat and for expat relocation and Japanese direct investment into single-family residential homes. Susan is the 2018, or she was the 2018 chairperson of the International Advisory Group through Houston Association of Realtors. She's the president-elect for the Women's Council of Realtors Houston chapter, and she is the current global liaison for Texas Realtors. I don't know how she's able to do all of that.
My goodness.
And have this plethora of clients that she serves.
Services.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
Guys, we welcome Susan Annour.
I'm gonna give her a little.
Yes. So,
Well, Susan, so much information. We have so many questions for you, but my first question is really, what factors make our Houston real estate market so appealing for buyers from other countries?
I think the market's a little bit different right now. As you know, the market is extremely hot here in Houston, but before this market heated up and exploded where we are today, Houston, in my opinion, has been undervalued. So It's a lot cheaper than other major cities such as Austin and Dallas. And I can speak for my clientele, which is Japan, later on in the interview, but I think it's just a very affordable, easy market to enter. Houston is, or was. Right now, of course, things are heating up, and it's a lot more expensive, and there's a lot of competition with the end user. So as far as like investments go, we're still seeing a lot of it, but not as much as before because the prices have all kind of gone way up in Houston.
Right. That's a good point. You know, I was looking at HAR the other day, and they were talking about just the average median home price. And I think since we started this season, the price has gone up.
Right.
Yeah, 307, I
Yes.
believe, was
Right.
the median price for Houston. I mean, so for international buyers, someone coming from a different country or even a different part of the US, that seems like, you know, low hanging fruit.
Correct,
right?
absolutely,
So-
absolutely.
So affordability, you're saying, is the primary driving factor.
Other major Texas cities. And on top of that, we have a really good rental market. So investors are always looking for, you know, the return on investment. So if I buy this for 300, how much can I lease it for? How long is it going to take me to lease it? What is the absorption rate of the asset after I buy it? So because there's such an influx of all different kinds of people, and, you know, we can touch on this later, but there's a big, huge population of diverse population in the renter pool as well. So it's kind of easy to lease them at good prices to where even buying at 300, if I can lease it for 2,500, let's say we have buy for 300,000 and we can lease it for 2,500 fairly quickly. That return, even with all the, you know, I mean, the property tax is kind of high, okay, here in Houston compared to like in Japan, for example, it's like less than 1%. So at the beginning, when I'm trying to pitch it, it's like, wow, 3%, you know, on average for taxes is very high. But even with the high property taxes, you know, and then you have the insurance, you have, you know, the management fees and, you know, a percentage of vacancies and repairs, the return still makes sense, even at 300,000, you know, because we can lease it so quickly and, you know, honestly, their rate of return, what they want return isn't as strict as some of our local investors. So that's another thing, is their required margins are not as high, and then they're banking on the back end for appreciation when they exit.
So Susan, what type of properties are more favorable to the foreign investor? Multifamily, single family, does it matter? Commercial, what are they looking for?
It depends on the level of the investor. So if it's an institutional investor, they're going to go for, they may go for commercial, a larger multifamily. Multifamily is for sure the most popular asset class, I would say, for investors. They understand it the most, right? And it's, you know, it's kind of a diversification of risk, because you have maybe, you know, let's say 50 units in one multifamily where, you know, you might have 3 vacancies and the thing still rolls. Whereas if it's like an industrial property, which is actually the second most popular, you may have a single tenant. So it's always going to be like all or nothing. It's either filled with the tenant, or it's vacant. We got to wait for the right tenant to come along and take it. So I feel like multifamily is the most popular asset class if they have, you know, maybe over $1 million or $2 million to invest. If they're beginner investors and they're, you know, like kind of just a regular person, they just want to invest, it's definitely going to be single family.
Now, Susan, what type of financing options are available for foreign buyers?
So there's different programs out there. Our firm, we deal exclusively, not exclusively, but we're very, very good at dealing with the Japanese market. The Japanese people have a lot of cash, and so we don't ever finance them ever. We're always straight cash. But I know that some banks specialize in various countries. So for example, BBVA, I think they have a program for Mexican nationals that want to invest. Or HSBC, they have some programs for Asian buyers coming over from like China and Hong Kong, Taiwan. So depending on the bank and where it's based, they have programs for their own country's people. But I think it just varies. If you're just going to go to like a Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they don't lend to foreign nationals. They don't have credit history. They don't have, you know, assets. They don't have anything built here in the States. They might not even have a social, so they would not qualify for like a regular Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac underwritten loan.
So for your particular clientele, Susan, you don't have to ever deal with financing. All of your clients are always paying cash.
Yes, mine are the ones that are straight out of Japan. They pay cash. We have some Japanese investors in New York and in a lot in California. And because they actually live here, they have jobs. You know, they all qualify for a loan just like everything else. And so, you know, we just have our local lenders here. I use, you know, several lender partners here. And as long as, you know, they have jobs and they live in the States and have credit history and they have a bunch of other properties with us, they can qualify for a normal mortgage here.
Okay, which kind of leads me into the next question. I'm not sure the 2020 numbers are out, Susan, but in 2019, do you know approximately how much did international buyers invest in real estate here in Houston?
I don't know the numbers here in Houston because I did not see that it drilled all the way down to the city. I think Texas Realtors has a report for how much went into Texas, and NAR has one into how much it went into the United States. I don't know that HAR has the ability to, HAR has the ability to track the actual dollar amount coming in from out of country. I did talk to Lori Carper this morning just to confirm the popular countries that were investing in here. And she replied with Mexico, Canada, and India as the top 3 countries investing into Texas.
Okay.
Into Texas, yes.
Susan, this is so much good information. I want you guys to stay right there. We're going to be right back. You're watching Red Door Conversations.
Welcome back to Red Door Conversations. We have Susan Annour here again, and she's given us a lot of good information on why we have so many international buyers in Houston. So Susan, I have a question for you, and this is one that I really want to get out. How important is it knowing an international buyer's cultural preferences?
I think it's key. It's key to them choosing you, right? Because they're coming from a different culture and they want to work with someone that they know and trust that understands what they don't understand. So by understanding their culture, you thereby understand what they don't understand. And then you can fill in the gaps to what they do need. You know, you need to catch them up to where we are doing business here. And knowing the difference between how we do business here and, you know, maybe how they buy a house over there will help you fill in the gaps and explain how the process works here. So I think it's critical to know how it works there so that you know what they don't understand so you can fill in the gaps and get them caught up.
Oh, yeah. Now, Susan, what are some things we should know about when working with Japanese buyers?
Okay, so Japanese buyers are, I like to describe it like this. They, you know, I lived there for 15 years. I kind of learn the hard way their culture. I mean, it's one thing to study about Japanese people and Japanese culture in a book, but once you're there and you're living that like them there as one of them, which I did, it really opens up your eyes to how, let's see, how do we say this nicely? How rule-oriented they are. They're very, very rule-oriented people. They like rules and they follow the rules. So they're not out-of-the-box thinkers. They're not, hey, it says this, but we're going to do that. This is what you said it was going to do, so now we expect it to do this. And so I have to be very, very careful on my pro formas, for example. I'm not going to say, hey, buy this for $250, I can lease it for $23, and then I put it on the market and I can only get $2,000, for example, because now I've done something to break their trust. I've presented something and then I couldn't perform on it, so now my trustworthiness has gone down the drain. So I'm very careful, and I always, you know, skew on the conservative side to say, hey, you know, actually me and Marla did a deal down in Clear Lake, and it was a Chinese investor. He was a local, But, we said, oh, no, it wasn't. It was my Japanese guys. Yeah. So they bought it, they flipped it. So a lot of things that we buy, we end up flipping to other Japanese investors in Japan. So anyways, that's another story. We had an investment company for 2-3 years, and we just went around Houston, just bought everything in sight. And then we flipped it to other Japanese investors in Japan, and then we held on to management. So in that case, there was a cushion of truth. In other words, because we would buy it and we would lease it, we would have the actual performance of it. We're not talking pro forma. We would actually have it leased and performing with actual numbers and then sell it. And that's how, one way we got around with having to do the guessing game or presenting pro formas, because it was actually doing what we said it was going to do. It was actually doing it. So proving performance is important. Following the rules, staying with what you said is important for that culture. Just in a nutshell, they have a very, very low tolerance for error. It sounds crazy, but they never error. They're like perfect or something. I don't know. They can't accept error. They don't forgive error. So it's kind of a high stress situation, but you can never ever make a mistake. So that's one thing that's kind of different about their culture that I feel like is different than our culture. Yeah. Here in America, we're like, oh, practice makes perfect, or no one's perfect, or go with the flow.
Learn from your mistakes.
So
don't repeat them. Yeah.
They're total opposite.
Right.
They're total opposites. They're very, very serious for the very low tolerance for error. I can say that.
So you were going to expound on question number 1.
During the break.
Yeah, question 1 was I read it to be, why do foreigners in general, not specifically Japanese, but why do foreigners in general pick Houston or Texas or America? And I think it goes back to, we're still a very stable country as far as like the economy, as far as politics, as far as, a safe place to park your money, and it's not just going to disappear, and, the dollar value is going to go to, down the drain, and, the money invested is going to be gone, or the house itself is going to be, whatever, taken over by governments. It's still a safe place to park money. And one of the reasons I think that Houston is particularly good is because of the cap rate. Like I said earlier, the ease of which we can lease them for at the prices that we can lease them for. They can park money here and make some money on the cash flow while it's parked here. And then, as you know, appreciation has been just fantastic for Houston over the last 5 years. I didn't feel like we were really an appreciating market. I got into real estate in 2010, and I didn't feel like it was really appreciating. Like my parents' house, they've been in there since like 1977, and it's like, I think they bought it for 100, and 30 years later, it was like 150. It like never went anywhere. And then just in the last 5 years, went from 150 to 260. So I'm like, wow, just this past few years, the appreciation in Houston has been so tremendous that, the foreign investor can put the money here, sit on it for 5 years, make cash flow for 5 years, and then exit with an appreciation on the back end. It's like a win 3 ways around. So
I feel like you just want to
This is
sit
good
and
stuff.
you have
And
so
just-
much
just
information,
soak it
so
all
much
in.
knowledge,
Girl.
Susan. I feel like we just need more time. I have a question I want to get to before we break for commercial. But Susan, can you tell us what the Foreign Investment in Real Estate Act is? I'm asking because you are so knowledgeable, and I know you know the answer. You can give it to our audience, and why it was put into place.
So the acronym is FIRPTA, and they say FIRPTA. And as you said, it stands for the Foreign Investment in Real Estate, Real Property Tax Act. So it came into play in like the 80s, like the early 80s. And the concept is that, okay, we have, let's say, a Japanese guy that bought a property in the States, and he lives in Japan, and he's not even here. And let's say he bought it for 100, and he sells it for 200, and he realizes that capital gain. Well, the government wants to make sure that they get a piece of that capital gain, right? So depending on his tax rate, he's supposed to pay, a percentage of the gain, just like, if we live in it, and it's our personal residence, we can get the homestead exemption and not pay the capital gains. But if we're an investor, even an American person, if we sell it and make a gain, we had to pay tax on the gain. And so the fear of when a foreigner sells and realizes the gain is they just take the gain and never pay the tax on it. So the government is like, in order for us to make sure that we get our share, we are going to withhold 15% of the sales price at closing.
That's right.
So on a $300,000 house, they're withholding 45,000. That's a crazy ton, right? To withhold that the guy doesn't get the sales proceeds. You would normally get like, this whole 100. You don't get a whole 100. You get like 55, and 45,000 is withheld on the previous example. And then what the foreigner has to do is go file his taxes, claim it, pay his taxes, and then apply for the refund of it. Yeah. And so it's the government's way of making sure that that guy pays capital gains tax and his taxes that are owed to the government by withholding some of their money, which is 15% of the sales price at closing.
That's good. At the end of the
that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we see at I think at the next to the last page on the contract, it's asked if you are a foreign national.
Yes, it does.
And you've got to check that box, yes or no. So does the title company withhold those funds? Because that contract goes to title and title disperses money. Does title withhold the funds? Or how is?
I wish title would hold the money, but title doesn't want the liability of holding that money in escrow. And so as many ties as I have to all these different title companies that we've closed so many deals all over the place, I mean, even the one that I use religiously, they will not hold it. They don't want that responsibility of, we have to hold it, we have to set it in. No. So technically by law and by, the way the contract reads and by the way the FERPTA reads, the buyer has a responsibility of holding it. And I think that's completely crazy, because here is the buyer who just bought this thing from the foreigner, give him the money to hold until the foreigner files his taxes and then trust that he doesn't spend it and that he gives it back. I think it's just like absurd. Like I can't even like ask for that. No, I can't even ask for that to happen. I don't trust that I could give 15% of the sales proceeds to a complete stranger buyer that is not going to spend it, and then not be able to return it.
Is there another option? I certainly want that. No way.
No
way. If I'm the seller, I'm not trying to give you this money, buyer, to hold on to.
Okay.
So
until I file my taxes and pray to God you haven't spent it. So because that's so absurd. The other option is, what we do is we hire a Japanese speaking CPA. He does all the calculations and he prepares all the paperwork, and at closing, the funds are sent to the IRS. Okay. They're just sent to the IRS.
Oh, okay.
And so the IRS holds it until you apply for your refund, and then the IRS releases it. But that's another way you could do it, which that's the way that I kind of recommend.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes
So
sense.
Susan, we are enjoying this information, but we've got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Red Door Conversations, Real Talk and Realty. If you've been tuning in, you already know that we've been having an amazing show. We're talking about why real estate in Houston is hot for foreign national buyers. And so we're going to jump right back in because we just have a few more minutes left. I think that it's very important for people to know and understand that Susan Annour, who is the owner of Annour Realty Group, who's here and has been sharing all of this information with us, it's important for people to know Susan is not Japanese.
That's right.
But she has carved out her niche in real estate to assist the foreign, Japanese market,
That's
international market. And so, Susan, how did you go about doing this?
I think God works in mysterious ways. I attribute a lot of my success to God, honestly, because I just don't think that my life could be masterminded any better than it was. My dad's from Hong Kong. He was an immigrant. My mom's from Taiwan. She was an immigrant. I'm first generation American-born Chinese American. And I grew up in Clear Lake City, which is a predominantly, Caucasian subdivision area, zip code, back in the day, back in, the early 70s. And ended up going to Clear Lake High School, ended up going to Baylor, following that very conservative track. And it was through Baylor that I ended up at an exchange program to Seinangakuin Dayaku in southern Kyushu island of Japan. And my parents were like, what in the world possessed you to apply for that? We don't have any friends there. You don't speak that language. You've never eaten that food. You have no exposure to that country. You've never been exposed to that country. Why would you do that? And when you're like 19, you just want to go see the world and go, try different things. And it was a scholarship. I'm not going to graduate late. I'll still graduate on time. All the credits I study there, I can still apply here. It goes to my major. I was BA Business, Certification in Asian Studies. It fit. And so they reluctantly let me go. And, that was the beginning of a long journey. As you said, I ended up marrying somebody there. I ended up very lonely there. It was tough. I mean, it was just very tough, right? Now, going as an exchange student versus going as, someone's wife is completely different. And so I had to learn their culture, learn their language, struggle through a lot of cultural differences. And until I found my job on the radio, I was this is like before the internet. It was crazy. I did live radio for 9 years. One of my last shows was the Top 40 Countdown, which is hilarious. But I hosted the Top 40 Countdown on that island of Kyushu. And just long story short, when I came back to the States, I came back in 2007, and I had never worked in the States as an adult because I had gone over there for college and never came back, right? So I had never worked in the States as an adult. I was 35 years old with 2 little kids and a retired professional athlete with no jobs. We cashed out and moved here back to Clear Lake. And I was like, I don't know what we're going to do for jobs. I think we probably had to figure that out.
Wow.
And so I got into real estate. Seriously, I got into real estate. I took a GRI class, and the marketing lady said, hey, if you're new, you're not going to make it. You've got to figure out what you have that other people don't have. What do you have? Why would they go to you? You are nothing. You are like a beginner with zero knowledge, no sphere, no experience. No one will pick you unless you bring some kind of special value add to your, to yourself. Mm-hmm. So you need to be thinking about what you got that no one else has. And so when I went back to thinking about that, I was like, well, I've been on the radio. I can talk. I can speak Japanese. That's like my one thing. I can talk and I have Japanese. And I'm from Houston. I know a little bit geographically. I know Houston. I have 3 things. I have 3 things. I'm a native Houstonian kind of, and I speak Japanese. So maybe that could be my niche, using the skills that God had given me, which is talking in Japanese, and then decided that would be my niche and that I was going to focus in as much as possible on getting the Japanese market to use Annour Realty.
I love your story. Love it.
That is amazing. You have definitely been a value add to the show.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have learned so much. I've taken so many notes. My paper is full.
Yeah.
And I gotta have you back. We gotta have you back. But unfortunately, we're out of time. And this will do it for our last show of the 3rd season of Red Door Conversations.
Yes.
We've had such an amazing time.
Yes.
I have tons of note papers, all filled with notes. If you missed anything, you should Google Red Door Conversations and revisit some of the shows from season 3. Susan Annour, we appreciate you being here and sharing your time with us, talking about why international buyers are hot on Houston. But as of today, that's a wrap. And we will see you next year.
We are out.
Bye, guys. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.